Hello everyone and welcome to Let's Test Drive. This episode, I'm going to be throwing two iconic steering wheels up against each other, the Logitech Driving Force GT and the Logitech G27. So if you currently don't have a steering wheel and are looking at buying one, or maybe you have a Driving Force GT and are thinking about upgrading to another wheel, maybe the G27 or something pricier, I'm going to be taking you for a rundown on which wheel does what better, why both of these wheels are great options under certain circumstances. I'll be showing you sound comparisons, explaining force feedback differences, giving you my thoughts and opinions, and just as a disclaimer, these are my opinions and I more than welcome yours in the comment section below. So let's get this underway with the Driving Force GT. Now this wheel was originally released back in 2007 and has been used by an entire generation of players. If you're new to racing with a wheel, in that you've never owned a wheel before and are hesitant at laying out a large sum of money to invest in significantly more expensive alternatives, or maybe you just have a budget to stick to, you cannot go wrong with grabbing this wheel. Again, if you've never raced with a wheel before, this will bring you an entirely new level of enjoyment and immersion with racing games. Now I'm going to be a little hesitant at recommending you grabbing this wheel for PlayStation 2 or 3 games, because where this wheel really shines is with PC sim titles like Assetto Corsa, R-Factor, iRacing, games that try to simulate accurate handling with complex physics models and feed that information back to your wheel with understeer, oversteer, weight transfer, tyre deformation, brake lockup, all that crazy stuff. Now the G27 in comparison to the Driving Force GT is a more expensive wheel, and after having the Driving Force GT for 6 months, I really wanted to experience what driving with a clutch and H-pattern shifter was like. That alone was the only reason I picked up the G27, and let me tell you that the clutch and H-pattern shifter alone has totally transformed my driving experience and made it more enjoyable. If you're in any way interested in learning how to race and drive well with a manual shifter and clutch, for the price you can pick up a used G27 for, you cannot go wrong with grabbing this awesome wheel. Now between Assetto Corsa, R-Factor, iRacing and European Truck Simulator, I've had a combined total of over 300 hours of play using the Driving Force GT. When I made the switch over to the G27, I used identical settings within the Logitech Profiler and in-game. And going from the Driving Force GT wheel to the G27 wheel, there were a few subtle differences in feel. Initially, the G27's steering felt a little lighter, the wheel rotation felt a little smoother, and the G27 was a little quieter. Let's see how they compare against each other in terms of sound now. Now, even though there is a notable difference, the sound of these wheels become irrelevant when you have your speakers turned up. The strength of the force feedback is also very similar in both. The biggest difference, however, I found in favour of the G27 was its force feedback rotation speed, especially when it came to drifting in Assetto Corsa. Now, in Assetto Corsa, I can drift with a Logitech Driving Force GT with the wheel rotation set to a full 900 degrees. If you want to learn how, check out my Learning to Drift video where I explain how I did it. The G27, on the other hand, makes drifting a lot easier. And whereas you'd have to assist or throw the Driving Force GT to compensate for its lack of fast rotation speed, the G27 is fast enough for you to not have to assist or throw the wheel yourself. So that brings me to one key point. Which wheel is better for drifting? Now, let me just point out that if you can't drift with a Driving Force GT, you won't be able to drift with the G27. It's that simple. However, if you're wanting to have hours of fun drifting with the Logitech Driving Force GT, you could practice the point of making up for the limitations of the wheel, or just set the degrees of rotation lower and still have a lot of fun. Out of the box though, the G27 is the better option for drifters. It has a quicker wheel rotation speed, but where it really shines and destroys the Driving Force GT is the fact that it has a clutch and H-pattern shifter combo, enabling you to clutch kick to drift. If you're wanting to be a serious drifter, you're still going to need a handbrake, but the G27's rotation speed and H-pattern shifter clutch combo easily make it the winner if you're a drift fan. Now, for anyone that's going to say you don't need a clutch to drift, I say you don't need a handbrake either. But different situations call for different techniques, and the more techniques you have at your disposal, the better you will be and the more fun you'll have. Another positive for the G27 is that its paddle shifters were a refreshing change to using the Driving Force GT's paddle shifter buttons located behind the wheel. There are cheap mods you can do to the Driving Force GT to make the paddle shifter buttons more ergonomic and easy to use, but in my time playing it was something I just adapted to. A lot of people will also mention the G27 pedals are a huge upgrade, and in terms of weight and materials used, that's definitely true. However, when racing, you will adapt to the feel, and neither has an advantage over the other of making your lap times any quicker. Now, people tend to criticize the G27 for a few reasons. I'll try and address some of the criticisms for you now. First, there are some people who state that it makes a rattly, clunky, chattery sound when going over curbs or grass. For those people, I say stay off the damn grass and turn your curb effects down. A lot of the setup guides to both of these will suggest not running any curb effects, which is the vibration effect causing the rattling when going over curbs or grass. Turning these effects off won't make your lap times any slower. The second criticism a few people tend to make is regarding a force feedback dead zone issue around the center of the G27. Now, anytime I read about these, it seems that the user will eventually make a setting change and it will suddenly be fixed or improved. Now, even though there might be a slight dead zone in the wheel, I myself have found it negligible after having tested all the games I mentioned above. So unfortunately, this isn't an issue I'm willing to comment on, but to me, with my wheel, it's not affecting my performance or enjoyment of the games. Another common point that comes up with any type of product, and in this example, the steering wheels mentioned, is the issue of reliability. If you've browsed forums, there will always be a few people that will state how poor their experience with a wheel has been due to faults or failure. People who have experienced a fault or failure with a product will always be more vocal regarding their experience. So when taking these types of views into account, be wary that they may be a minority, and understand that all products have failure rates, and while their experience has been very real, they may not apply for the majority of users. Which leads me to one key point: pricing. I originally picked up the Driving Force GT as an impulse buy, brand new, for 150 Australian dollars. If I'd been smarter and less impulsive, I could have easily picked up one used on gumtree.com.au for 50 Australian dollars. Now, Gumtree is a used trading site and also operates in the United Kingdom and is identical to Craigslist if you're from the US. When I thought about buying a G27, I opted to use Gumtree to buy one used and jumped at the opportunity of buying one when one popped up for 150 Australian dollars. If you're from Australia, the UK or the US, I'd strongly suggest you consider the possibility of buying one secondhand, as in some markets these wheels may be discontinued and no longer available new. There are obviously other options like buying off eBay from somebody in the same city as you to avoid shipping costs, or even checking out secondhand shops or pawn shops. So that leads me to my final points. Which wheel is better? Which wheel should you buy, or should you upgrade to a G27 if you already have the Driving Force GT? If you've never owned a wheel before but want to experience sim racing and aren't fussed about having a H-pan shifter and clutch, get the Driving Force GT. If you're not sure if you'll enjoy sim racing and want to see what all the fuss is about, grab the Driving Force GT. If drifting doesn't interest you in the least bit and you're more of a grip track racer, grab the Driving Force GT. Now, under what circumstances should you buy the G27? If you're in any way, shape or form interested in driving with a H-pan shifter and clutch, get the G27. If you've already got a Driving Force GT and want to experience what a H-pan shifter and clutch is like, but don't want to spend the money on a new pedal set with a clutch and H-pan shifter combo from the likes of Thrustmaster, get the G27. If you're a big drift fan and don't have a wheel, or if you have a Driving Force GT and want to take your drifting to the next level, get the G27. So there you have it, my thoughts on both of these wheels. As always, thank you for watching. If you found this video helpful, be sure to hit the like button. Be sure to check out my other videos if you're into racing games. And if you want to see more videos from me in the future, be sure to hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you all again next time.